scienceandpublicpolicy.org, whatsupwiththat.com, the leading fighter of the global government carbon fraud, Lord Monckton. So people just tuned in. I think we should go for the political lies, how the elites are making money on this. You know, we already know from Hide the Decline, their own documents, it's a fraud, other studies that are out there. But I know you've been at the tip of the spear with top researchers, publishing in top journals. You say you've got a new mega findings that have just been discovered coming out soon. So tell us about that, sir.
The most important thing you need to know is that, yes, you're right that, of course, we can say they're all making money out of it, and so they are. But the only way to stop them, and stop them quickly, is to prove that they are wrong. And they thought they could get away with making a waffly story that is very hard to prove wrong, and they'd get away with it. However, they made several large errors, which have taken us a long... It's taken me 11 years to find these errors. I've been working quietly away at it. We finally got there. We know what they did wrong. We know how big this is. What it means is that yes, you'll get a little bit of warmer weather as a result of putting carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, but it's not going to be much more than kind of 1 Celsius for every doubling of CO2 concentration. You're looking at 1 Celsius of warming over the next 100 to 150 years. It's not exactly anything that really needs to be worried about. And here's the difference, Alex. We can prove it. I'm not going to go into the weeds of how we've proved it. That will be for the scientists to pick through once we publish. But the point is that this is different from just saying, well, it's probably not going to happen, as they say. We can prove that it's not going to happen, as they say, because their estimates are based on these 4 huge errors in the model's calculations that we have now found. We've calculated them. We've been to our national science laboratories on both sides of the Atlantic to get confirmation of our understanding of what we've found. That's not to say they will endorse what we've found. They don't do that, but they will do measurements for us. We've had them done, and what those measurements show is that we are right about this. And once this paper is out there, then everyone who goes around saying there's a 97% consensus and Trump must toe the line with the rest of the world community, all he needs is this one paper. And all he has to do is to give this to anyone who tries to say that to him, Juncker or whoever, and say, go away, get your scientists to read this and come back and tell me if I am wrong. And of course, they won't be able to, because this is a formal mathematical and physical proof. And that's the difference. Nearly every paper until now on climate science has been speculation. It's been saying, well, we think this might happen and we think the other will happen. And some of the observations point this way and some of the observations point that way. What we have done is to go right back to the theory, to look at the theory that they're using to multiply up how much warming we're going to get from the very small effect you get just from the CO2 itself. And we have found that, to put it really at its simplest, Alex, they screwed up, and we can prove it. And what that means is that once this paper is published, and it can't be stopped, eventually it will be published, not long away now, I think. Once it's published, then that's the end of the climate scare. You watch how quickly it collapses after this comes out. Because however much they may want to go on making money out of this, there will no longer be any reason to have a UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. That was based on these mistakes. No longer any need for an IPCC, no longer need for the Paris Accord or any of the other plethora of treaties by which, just like the EU, a treaty here, a treaty there, until suddenly all your freedoms are gone, they were doing that on a world scale with this climate thing. All of that will now come to an end, because we can prove that they were wrong. This is over, Alex. It's over. And it's all over by the shouting. We've got to publish the paper, sure, but we've had it read by the greatest experts in the world on the particular kind of mathematics we're looking at.
So let's be clear. You've already published with other scientists some of the top, I'm not just saying this, some of the, in fact, don't you have the most read paper in the world?
Well, yes, in the Chinese Science Bulletin, which is the science bulletin of the Chinese Academy of Sciences, the world's largest scientific academy, we published a paper a couple of years ago which was so popular around the world that it had been read by 12 times as many people as any other paper in the entire history, 60-year archive of that distinguished journal. I mean, this is the world's largest Academy of Sciences. They don't suffer fools gladly. We had quite a time getting it through peer review because we were saying then we were beginning to point to some of the areas of the mathematics that we're looking at. And then I wrote a further paper, which was published in the Energy and Environment Journal, again a couple of years ago, which said, look, there are problems with this mathematics. Here are what the problems are, and we can't yet see what they've done wrong. Can anyone
Sure.
help?
I mean, the truth is we don't know.
Someone came forward and they said, you need to read this textbook. I read it, and the moment I saw it, I saw what they'd done wrong, and we've done the math, and, well, that's the end of it.
And that's coming out in the next few weeks. But just getting back to the beginning, that's very exciting. Just in closing here, I want folks to know history's happening right now, and they've spent how many decades and how many, I know it's over $100 billion, big central banks, governments pushing the carbon tax and, you're pushing this planetary regime and to monitor all the nations and make the nations go under it. So beyond the tax, it's the global control, it's the global court, it's the global enforcement, it's the climate crimes. All that's happening. This is so big Trump's doing this, A, and then B, every time you're on, I get tweets and emails and on the street people go, next time Monckton's on, bring up this. And I know there's people that think every ice crystal trail, is some type of weather modification, but they have patents. They admit there's barium salts, aluminum dioxide. They admit there's massive weather mod going on. Bill Gates is involved. Dubai's involved. China's involved. They've got antenna arrays that are manipulating the ions and the nuclei. I guess mimicking some of the things that solar radiation does. We know when there's a big solar flare, we have thunderstorms or whatever. I mean, this has all been documented. They're artificially manipulating the weather already. And we know there's a UN climate manipulation weather weapon 1979 treaty introduced in 78, passed in 79. So we know this is going on. It's very secretive. So then people exaggerate because they don't know what's really going on. But from your deep research into climate, do you have any comments on how that might be affecting things?
Yeah, the first thing is that we are far smaller and far less powerful in affecting the climate than they think. And that's why they can't do much more than a little bit of silver iodide dropped on the clouds to make them rain when you have a drought in a local area. You can't do anything worldwide to alter the weather, however hard you try. And this is really the result of our research. You can just see that there is a kind of inbuilt stability to the climate system, which means that short of letting off every nuclear bomb around the world and go on doing that every day for the next 400 years.
That's right. We wouldn't have this ancient planet with an ancient atmosphere if it wasn't a very stable position.
That's exactly right, Alex. I mean, you're quite right. Here we are, 4.5 billion years on. Okay, there may be a few people who think it's only 6,000 because they believe in the rather balmy calculations of an Anglican divine in the 17th century.
I was about to say, the Bible doesn't say that. The Bible doesn't say that. Some preacher did.
That's right. It was Bishop Usher. He was a very worthy, amiable divine, and he just amused himself by calculating how many generations there'd been since Abraham in the Bible. And from that, he worked out that the world was created on the 15th of April, 4004 BC. And there are even Bibles of the period, I've got one, which show every date thereafter from 4004 BC until the time of Christ, all written into the margins. And it's all very silly. But the point is, this is a very old planet. It's a very stable planet. To destabilize it, you'd need to do something to the sun. You'd need to have a big asteroid hitting us. We'd need to go through a large cloud of intergalactic dust. There'd need to be an enormous supervolcano eruption. These are the things that can alter the climate. But altering 1 part in 2,000 of the composition of the atmosphere over the next 150 years is not going to make any difference at all. And as I say, the magic thing about our paper is that we can prove it. And it's already beginning to worry people because they've begun to hear about it. I've given a couple of talks about it. But the latest thing that we've found just in the last couple of weeks shows the stakes are even bigger than we thought. And therefore, we are now just concluding our research in the next couple of days. Then it goes off to the journal for peer review. And if
we'll have you on there, but we're almost out of time. Let me just say this.
Yeah.
When you've got 6 years ago, the main group coordinating the universities globally saying, let's hide the decline, I think it's pretty clear they know this is a joke. But I mean, I know we
can prove it. That's the difference. Once they know we can prove it, once they know we know what they did wrong, once they know that anyone who in future tries to say that we are going to have a significant impact on the climate will be laughed at because there is no scientific basis for it. Then
here's my final two questions.
The one thing these people don't like is to be laughed at, and they're going to be if they try to persist in this line any longer.
They don't like being questioned. They say every scientist agrees when almost none of them actually agree with them.
We can prove that they're wrong.
Sure. Okay. Now let me do these two final. Our Skype's a little bit off here, so I hope you can hear me.
Yeah.
I know there's different numbers from ice cores and mud cores and other things that they've done. The numbers, hundreds of times the CO2 in our history, and that didn't make the planet overheat too much. In fact, a lot of scientists and climatologists I've read believe if CO2 tripled or quadrupled, it would make plants grow faster, make the oceans more healthy, and they believe the planet's so old that we're actually in a carbon-starved position and down the road could off-gas and even end up like Mars that clearly lost its atmosphere. I know you've talked to climatologists, you've talked to solar physicists, you've talked to astrophysicists.
Let me give you some figures on this. It's very interesting. I mean, you're quite right. Patrick Moore, the founder of Greenpeace, who is, of course, no longer with Greenpeace because he doesn't believe in global warming, he has done a very interesting paper, which I helped him write, which shows that over the last 2,000 years, 2 million years, I should say, the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere has been steadily declining, almost to the point where plants were being starved of it. Now we're putting more CO2 into the atmosphere. Everything grows like bilio in the garden. I don't know if you ever have time to plant a garden, but if you do, everything grows much faster now because of what's called CO2 fertilization. CO2 is plant food. The paradoxical thing about this is that we know now from the satellites that CO2 is greening the planet. You can see it from outer space. Areas like
So shouldn't we actually terraform or what do they call it, if you've already got an atmosphere? Shouldn't we geoengineer with more of it?
Of course we should, and that's what we're doing, of course, because despite all the preaching and the whinnying from these profiteers of doom, everybody is burning more fossil fuels.
It's almost like there's a God involved that as soon as...
the climate is responding very favorably because everything is growing at a rate it's never grown in our lifetimes. This is a thoroughly good thing.
Sure.
And you're quite right.
What about the danger in closing in 30 seconds?
Quite staggering. The total plant biomass of the Earth has gone up by something like 15 to 30% in the last 100 years.
What about the cycle? Aren't we due for a new ice age?
Well, who can tell? It's 5,000 years overdue, so don't hold your breath.
But, I mean, we should actually be worrying about cooling then. I mean, that's what the evidence shows.
Cooling is the real killer. Cooling is the real killer. If the planet were to cool even by as little as 1 Celsius degree, large amounts of agricultural area would disappear, and that would impose real strain on the populations of the world.
Thank you, Lord Monckton. Thank you so much. Thank you. Big day with President Trump. Thank you so much for your work, bringing us to this point, and the listeners. We're all in this together, ladies and gentlemen. We're making history. We're changing things. We're on the march. The empire's on the run.